Yo, what's up, hitmakers? It's Alex Rome here, and today I'm going to show you how I master a track from start to finish to get that professional quality mastered sound. To give you a brief idea of what mastering is, it's kind of like the final stage in music production. I break music production down into 3 stages: the songwriting and composition and everything that has to do with producing the track and laying everything down and recording and all that stuff. Then there's the mixing stage, which is number 2. And then there's the mastering stage, which is the final stage, which to sum it up is kind of like making all the layers blend together, sit well together, and compress well together. It's basically like taking your mix of sounds and making it become one thing. I feel like my mastering skill is at a pretty high level, so it's really cool to get to share this with you guys because a lot of you do ask and request all the time that I share that with you. So here we go. Here's the video. Of course, all I ask in return is that you go ahead, hit that thumbs up. I would really appreciate it if you like this video, and also if you're new here, subscribe to this channel. And of course, share your thoughts in the comment section below. I would really appreciate that from you. Let's get into the video. Show you how to master a song. Woo! Alright, so let's come into our DAW here. I have a track loaded up. This track is actually my song called Clueless Days, and it's available on my SoundCloud if you want to go check that out. But basically, I took the unmastered stem, and I'm going to master it for you, show you how I master a track from start to finish. The mastering chain that I'm going to use for this track is the same chain that I would use on a hip-hop song with vocals and pop song with vocals. I use the same chain on my song On and Off Love that I did with Lauren Panic, or Lauren Nicole. I said her name wrong. You can also check that out on my SoundCloud as well if you want to check out the mastering on that. But yeah, I use the same chain for most songs. For rap beats, I do not use the same chain. That's going to be a little bit more of a simple chain. But let's get into our mastering session. Okay, so this song sounds like this unmastered. This is the intro. And then you get into like the bridge, or verse, whatever you want to call it. This will be our chorus. Obviously, you can see it is stupid quiet. It is so quiet here that you can barely see the waves. So what I like to do, like before I do anything, a lot of people say like there's like a 6 decibel of headroom rule. What I say is turn up the gain, make your waves a little bigger, but keep, don't like crash it into the ceiling here. But just make it so you can visibly see what's going on. Let's leave it at this. So now, we're already louder. Bang, mastering. I actually used to think that mastering just meant making your song louder and throwing a compressor on there. It didn't matter if you knew what you were doing with the compressor or not. But it's actually a lot more than that. Also, it's not as intense as everybody. Like, when I used to watch mastering videos, everyone's like, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to, don't ever use headphones. You need, like, perfect monitor. Like, no, you actually realistically don't need much besides a pair of reference headphones and I like another pair of monitors on hand. So you can switch back and forth regularly throughout. But having just one of these is actually really annoying. So I would say have a couple pair of speakers on hand that you can compare your track on, preferably one of them being a good pair of studio monitors. These are studio monitor headphones, Audio-Technica ATH M50Xs, and these are M-Audio BX8s, a grand total of like $400 worth of speakers here, so not too much when we're speaking how much money you can realistically spend on a good set of, something to hear your music on, but you don't need to go overboard with it. And like I always say with mastering, if you have no idea what you're doing, have fun with it. Try everything. Destroy your track, destroy the sound of your track, because you can always just rebound your track and or you can always just take your chain off and you got your perfect track there unharmed. But what I would say is just have fun with it. See what certain things sound like. Try things. Try out of the ordinary things and see what kind of sound you get. It's okay. It's okay to mess shit up and not know what you're doing if you're new. Good thing about being new and watching this video is you're gonna learn a lot. So let's get into it. So yeah, basically we got our stem here and we got some gain so we can see what's going on. This visually is my loudest part of this track. This is an electronic track, by the way. And we have my other loudest part of the track right here. So when I master, I'm going to be focused on this part when it comes to, you know, the width, like the imaging and the compression and the EQing and stuff like that, so that everything kind of seamlessly flows into the drop or the chorus, or yeah. Let's get into it. So first thing that I like to do is I like to load up an equalizer. I'm going to use FabFilter's equalizer, and I just like to check things out. The next plugin we're going to do, iZotope Ozone 7. So I know I'm going to get a lot of people asking about if I can do this with, if you can master a track with free plugins, which I already did. Just go through my videos and find the ones where I find the video that I find the video called How I Master Songs with Free Plugins or something like that. I don't know. I'll find it and link it in the description for you. But using free plugins is definitely you are at a loss. I would highly recommend investing into plugins that can get a higher quality sound. That's true. I can't do the same mastering with free plugins. It's just not as quality. But yeah, iZotope Ozone 7. First thing I do is I right click this spectrum in the dynamics. Right click it. Then we're going to go spectrum options. And we're going to go into dynamics. I like to go digital for crossover type. And put the crossover as cut as possible. And that's just like a modern age thing. Now in the 80s and 90s when they were mastering Led Zeppelin and all the rock songs on the radio, they were with normal looking crossovers that all looked like this, like very subtle. This was like kind of a newer thing, I think in the late more recent times. So anything that's recent and has to do with mastering, I'm gonna do that. Because it's just, it's like new ways of doing things, and it's a cool result. It's a very tight result. Watch. So next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna play in the chorus, and I'm gonna click learn. And let this thing decide where it wants to piece out the different bands. Now, just to make sure it knows what it's talking about, let's go to the second chorus and hit learn again. Look at that. I don't even need to be smart enough to decide my band separation here. All I gotta do is click learn and this thing does it for me. Like, come on, that is crazy awesome. Okay, so I like to multiband compress, and that's what we're going to do here. We're going to use some multiband compression first, and I like to do it in mid-side processing. So instead of just compressing the stereo image as a whole, we're going to do the mid and not even do the side. All I really do is crush the low mids of the mids, and let the sides stay variable. And by variable, I mean just I'm not going to touch them. So when I'm crushing the midsection, I do it with parallel compression. So I'm going to use this threshold here to kind of bring down this threshold, and you're going to see some activity start to happen here. I turned off the FabFilter Pro Q because I don't want that little dip to mess me up. I'll do that after iZotope. So I'm pretty much going to over compress here on purpose, and then basically come down here to the attack and the release. And I always like these to be as quick as I can get without going overboard and getting distortion. Now I'm going to work this knob to find a compression that I like to listen to. Up here might be a little too compressed. Down here won't be compressed at all. So basically what parallel compression is, you're deciding how much of the wet signal and how much of the dry signal you're going to keep. This is going to be 100% wet, this is going to be 100% dry, this is going to be a little bit of both, this is going to be more wet and less dry. But let's see what I like. Also, I'm going to turn on auto gain while I do this, so I don't get like confused by the different gain stuff happening. So basically what I was listening for is, most typically when I'm doing that, it's the bottom of the snare and the top of the kick. When you're too wet, you lose both of those things. When you're not dry enough, those things don't sound like they're part of the mix. They sound like they're kind of sticking out front, and they don't sound blended, like that nice blended sound. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to come down here into the bass and do the same thing to the bass. Let's go ahead and over compress it. So now we got some nice over compression there. Let's go ahead and do the same thing down here. Make some quick attack, quick release, or quick, yeah, you saw me, right? You saw what I did, right? Let's go to the parallel knob. So now when you see me slide, I might be a little too overdone here, but when you see me sliding this up and down, what I'm going to be listening to on the bass end is the kick, the bottom of the kick versus the bass line. Too wet, I'm going to lose a lot of that thumpy kick. And too dry is going to be like the kick and the bass are just doing their own thing. Won't really be sucked together. And that part is just ear training. If you're new at this, you will not be able to, probably won't be able to hear a difference there. But as you do it every day, and as you listen for certain little tiny details, you'll start to learn. But what you could take from this is the methods at which I'm doing it. So I'm not even going to compress up here, because all this really is my pad sound, and like the pad, no, not even the pads and the leads, and also the tops of the percussion. So compressing this, to me, I stopped doing it. I used to do it, but you don't really have to compress up there, because all you're really going to do is take away from your percussion, and I like percussion to be kind of untouched and handled in the mix. Not going to touch that. Also, the sides, I'm not going to touch the sides either. And to give you a brief explanation of what the difference between mid and side is, this is the mids. Here, how there's nothing in the sides, that's the mids. That's exactly what's in front of the listener. The sides is exactly what's beside the listener, like really wide. So here's the sides. And what you're listening to right there is nothing in the center, nothing in the mono. I hear a little bit of phasing in there. That could be a hint that maybe something is too wide for this mix to sound good. But let's go audition the mono. it'll sound just the same as the mids, as when we auditioned the mids or soloed the mids, because mono and mid are kind of the same thing. A really important thing is to audition your mono and make sure that it's not muddy. If it's muddy, that's the most important signal of your track, because that's the part of your track that's right in front of the listener. It's the part that they can visually see, especially the really like tone deaf amateur ears. The mono is the easiest part of the song for them to listen to. So I always say, make sure your mono is absolutely clean as hell before you master it, or it's not gonna be that fun to listen to. Okay, let's not worry about the maximizer. Let's come into here, into this module section. What I like to do is imaging. Actually, we can do imaging later. Let's go into Exciter, and we'll do Exciter before that. So, like, basically, iZotope starts with the EQ, which I'm not even going to touch. We're going to start with dynamics, and then it'll move through to the exciter, and then it'll move through to the imager, and then it'll move through to the maximizer, which is the limiter. It's kind of like how Logic starts at the top of the audio effects list and works its way down. So anything you have back here is going to be post whatever you do down here. So the next thing I'm going to do is exciting, which is just like saturating, which if you don't know what either of those are, is like distortion, creating loudness out of nothing. That's what that is. It's kind of creating loudness out of nothing. It's taking quieter parts of your track and just kind of beefing them up along with the louder parts of the track. So it's another method of blending. Mid-side processing, baby. I'm a mid-side processor. I don't like processing the stereo image as a whole. I feel like this is 2018. We have the option now, and this might have always been the case, but hey, it's 2018 and I'm alive now, so I have the choice to do mid-side processing or stereo imaging, stereo processing as a whole. I'm not going to do that if I can have more control over the mids and the sides. When I excite in iZotope, I only excite the sides. I don't excite the mono. I let the mono stay as clean as it can be. Then I dirty up the sides. Gives it a, like, roughens up the signal a little bit. It's okay to add a little bit of dirt. And it also makes it, like, a little louder and a little wider, if you will. So, first thing, so kind of to give you a brief run through of how this works is this exciter. Basically, I'm going to push these up, and you're going to hear loudness come in the sides. That's exactly it. You're just going to hear loudness. You're going to hear different types of loudness every time I push a different one of these up. Also, there are different presets as to what kind of loudness we want to hear. Do we want to hear a warm loudness, an old retro-style loudness distortion, old tape-style distortion loudness thing, tube, triode, dual triode. Triode would be like the newest, most modern sound, which is big and clean. Sometimes it's too clean for me. A lot of the times I like going a little bit dirtier on the distortion, but for this, in this case, this is like a new sounding electronic song, futuristic as hell. So I'm gonna go triode. Watch this. You hear that? It's just loudness in the sides. Watch this. Since my bass is in mono, probably nothing's gonna happen if I do this. Yeah, nothing's gonna happen there. I actually heard a little bit of the kick get blown up there, but let's go ahead and excite this subtly. Subtly. When you're mastering, you don't want to do anything too harsh, because if you're like me, you're going to have a lot of effects on your mastering chain, and if you push all of them too hard, then you're just going to get a mess of effects and not enough music. Be subtle with this stuff. like the sound of that one, but let's go ahead and turn it on and off, see if we can hear a difference. So my problem in the mix, when I was mixing this track, is my lead was very, very, very thin and monophonic. So I was having trouble getting it to be wide. So doing little things like exciting the sides will help push that, make the lead a little wider. All right, next thing I like to do is imaging. So right here is my song, and this is a direct representation of what a stereo image actually looks like. Here's me, I'm this little dot. Here's my right ear, and here's my left ear. And here's my everything I see in front of me audibly. So your mono is going to be like right here, and everything in the sides is going to kind of float out to here. So if I play it, my song is pretty good looking. Like, that's a pretty nice circle right there. Like, that's a nice group of sounds. Like, to make, that's a big sound. That's nice. Now, if it was too big, this line right here would be crossing down to this section and would be turning red, kind of like here. Basically what this is saying is like I'm not crossing over like the bad line, which would be down here, which would mean that I'm too wide. And if my line was like kind of tapered up against the ceiling here, that would mean that my song was a little thin and maybe I could get away with getting a wider sound somehow. I would go back into the mix to make that happen. If I didn't feel like going back into the mix, I would just, push everything to its limits here. But now basically what I'm going to do is just do some kind of like cleanup on this imaging. Anytime I push one of these knobs here, a certain band or a certain frequency group is going to either go wide or thin. Now your bass should always be in stereo. I'm just kidding. don't ever do that. Your bass should always be in mono. that was just a stupid joke. Anyway, your bass should always be in mono, and this purple represents the bass. This represents the mid-lows. I don't touch either of these usually because I like to handle that in the mix. Now, this one is my super high frequencies. I always like to push these wide because why not? I used to crush it, but I figured that's sometimes too big of a sound, and I don't have to do that to sound cool. So I just push it pretty wide. I read somewhere that Skrillex used to like to do that. I don't know if he still does, but he used to like to do this on his master to get the high frequencies to be as wide as he could. But yeah, me, I just like to do that, some subtle. With some of my skinnier beats, probably would look something like this. All these kind of helping out the width. And again, anytime you push one of these knobs up, a frequency band gets wide. Like loses the mono, gets wide. I don't know actually if it loses the mono, but now I'm going to start having fun. I did the important shit stuff. Let's start having fun. This is like one of my tricks. I never shared it, but I'm just going to share it. I never liked to share this. Okay, let's go into iZotope real quick. I still have a limiter doing nothing, but it's on there. I didn't want somebody to get confused. So basically we just multiband compressed, excited, saturated the sides, and imaged it a little bit. Stereo spread it a little bit. Now I'm gonna add reverb to the master, but it's probably not what you're thinking. I like adding a little tiny bit of reverb as kind of like a blending factor. Now, what I mean by that is the reverb, when you add a little bit of reverb, it kind of fills in those empty gaps and you perceive your song as bigger. You're not going to hear what I do, because what I'm going to do is put on like this much reverb on the master. And I'm just going to kind of leave it as it is. Kind of leave it just whatever, 1.10 seconds, you know, size. I'm going to actually put the size and density all the way up. But that's about it. And the purpose of doing this is to blend those little inaudible empty spaces together and to perceive the song as a little bit bigger, and it also adds a little bit of dirt. So you don't have too clean of a sound. I always say, like, when your sound is too clean, it's digital and sounds like computerized, like a computer made it, and it's boring. Don't be afraid to add a little bit of dirt to your master. And this is just one way in which I do it. Also, you perceive the song as a tiny bit bigger, because this reverb is just adding bigness and width and size, everything like that. But at such a little amount that you don't hear what's going on, you perceive what's going on. Your brain can tell, but you can't. It's weird, I know, but I've done it so many times, and I live by it. It helps out with blending everything together and becoming a warmer, you know, whole sound. Trust me, if you don't believe me, just try it. Just try it. You might think I'm crazy. Sometimes I really push the envelope on it too, and make it audibly visible. And it's actually pretty sick. Yeah, I don't cut any of the lows out or anything. And it kind of makes the bass, like, fashionably muddy. It's kind of cool. But I wouldn't do that if you don't know what you're doing, and you're going to release the song to a label or something. Don't do that reverb trick. Only do that to have fun with and try it and see what's going on with it. Next thing that I like to do is I like to add saturation to this stereo image. This is another one of those methods of adding dirt. That's what saturation is. You're just dirtying everything up. You're making it a little thicker sounding. You're going to, every time the kick hits, there will be a little bit of a distorted sound. But that's okay, because you're dirtying everything up. This is like adding the same color blending technique to everything. And I could go far into this. I can have fun with saturating this all day. A cool thing about FabFilter Saturn, I will never burp on a YouTube video again, I'm sorry. The cool thing about FabFilter Saturn is you can split up your bands and kind of saturate the different bands. So like a big thing I like to do is saturate the bass, but never that much. But it's always cool to push something as far as it can go, see what it sounds like. Basically, this will add a little bit of dirt to the kick. Also, I'm seeing that I'm quite low here in terms of everything. Like, there's nothing but kick there, kind of taking up that range, which is okay. I mean, it sounds good. It doesn't sound like there's a hole in the mix or anything, but I might push this. And also, like the Exciter and Isotope, there's different types of distortions that you can play around with. I'm not going to play around with those because I play around with them for hours on end sometimes. But you can go into this, just have fun with it. I'm showing you what I do. Now, this might not be exactly the settings I would release to a record label or release on my SoundCloud, but I will mess around for a long time until I get a cool sound. And that's what it's all about, is just having fun. You don't gotta treat your master like it's this untouchable, don't fuck up thing. Have fun with it. Try things, because until you try things, you're not gonna learn fun things. You're not gonna learn fun things to do. So after the distortions, we've already distorted twice, and we didn't listen to our intro or anything. And sometimes distortions will mess your like quiet parts of your track up by literally adding too much dirt to those parts of the track. So my distortion there was actually adding too much of a mess down here and a little too much of a mess down here. One thing to focus on when you're mastering is what's the most important part of your track. My thing for this track is I want the lead to be the most important thing, and that's a high frequency. And you know, I'm hanging out down here pushing the saturation to another level, and now the bass is trying to take the lead, and the lead's kind of up top being the lead, and too much noise is going on. So what I would do is kind of play around down here now and take down the distortion levels down here and see what'll happen if I push the envelope up here. And to compare with the master, and that's another thing with mastering, it's always good to be referencing tracks back and forth, because your master is your final, you know, your final touch. So a good thing to do would be to reference final versions of any song in the world, which will be the songs that you find anywhere on the internet, on Spotify, places like that. Here was my old master of Clueless Days. I mastered this for like a day. So I'm hearing a little bit more crispiness on the top of that one, which could be possibly something like this. It could be a little bit of EQing to try to boost that lead, to make that lead come out a little bit. Oh yeah, it is! I remember what I did! So here's what I did. I found the lead in the EQ, like where the lead is singing, and I literally gave it a little boost like this, just to kind of help it out. Isn't that sick? I might boost the lead up like that. Now with singers vocal, like female or male vocals, I like to boost the 2000s range, and see what happens from there. Also, since the chords are kind of blaring, they take away from the leads a little bit. I might run them down a little bit. Because I want that lead to be singing. There's so much stuff in mastering that's important that you just gotta say fuck it and have fun. And that's basically what I do. I try things, and I get good results now, finally. It took me a while, but I get good results. Now, finally, let's limit the track, which is the most important, not the most important, but it's the most important for getting that loudness, that big, steep loudness. And the limiter I'm going to use is the iZotope Ozone limiter. I used to use FabFilter's limiter, Pro L, but I found that I could not get my songs to be as loud as I wanted them with that one, and this limiter can for some reason get loud. With the iZotope's limiter, I like the IRC4, and I like to use the transient one, and I don't know what that means. It's just the one that I can get really loud, and I like the word transient. True peak limiting is always on. I always go as fast as possible when it comes to the attack and release. Now, on some limiters, you will see an attack and release knob. iZotope's version is, I think, this thing, and I just put it to fast because I want this shit working fast. So, let's get it. Now's the best part. We just get to crash this thing into the ceiling. Let's get it! Oh, yeah. First thing you do before you set your maximum depth is set your ceiling to 0.1 or 2. Or anything, really. But you don't want it to be 0. That's the point. Give yourself like that little tiny bit of headroom. And I will limit till the first sight of that. Like, literally, that's like activity. I will limit until I see that. I will never limit past 5 decibels. If you're crashing your thing into the ceiling and you have a lot of, like, say you have a lot of limiting, but your song isn't getting as loud as maybe this one or tracks on Spotify and YouTube, that means your mix is bad and you gotta level out your mix to fit into this limiter perfectly. That's how a limiter works. The better mix you have, the louder you can really push a limiter. And so, I'll literally go to overload and just call it a day. But anyway, yeah, a little bit of limiting, that's all I want. I don't need to go louder than that. This track is... what I realistically would do is just reference it, make sure it's on par with other tracks, as loud as other tracks. It's a big thing is referencing. But yeah, basically I'll limit to that till I see some limitation activity happening, and call it a day. Listen to this track over the next week, decide what needs to be tweaked, and run it through one last mastering stem next week. After I come up with a lot of things that I want to fix, after I listen to this track in my car, in my plane, in my house. I'm just kidding, I don't have a plane. But after I listen to this track in everywhere, I will come up with a little list of like, okay, bass is too loud, mids are too low, doesn't sound like there's much enough in the lead. I might go into the mix, touch some things up, run it through this mastering chain again, tweak some things in there along the way, and bada bing, we got a hot track, a hot mastered track, man. And let's go ahead and do a nice before and after. I'm going to turn everything off. Now everything's on. Now everything's off. Now everything's on. And one more time, everything's going to be off. Now everything's going to be on. And that's how you master a song, guys. I would appreciate it if you leave a thumbs up and leave your thoughts in the comments below. If you're new here, I love you. Please subscribe. And, of course, follow my Twitch at twitch.tv/AlexRome, where I stream live every day. Woo! How to master a song, baby!